For a long time, our relationships at home were basically for survival. Then we brought in romantic love and companionship. And now we have gone up the Maslow ladder of needs and we want intimate relationships for self-actualization. Meaning, I want you to help me become the best version of myself. And many of you are spending your time wondering, who am I? What am I? Am I what I want to be? Am I where I want to be? Is this good enough? Can I be more? Can I be better? Navigating relationships and cultivating relational intelligence is key in all parts of our lives, personal and professional. But I would also say that at this moment, becoming fluent in the language of relationships is essential to the world that we're going to live in. We are wired for connections, but how can we do it better? What's happening in the world at this moment is something that, as a clinician, I sit with every hour, thousands of people in conversation around the globe with whom I grapple with the complexities of modern relationships. I believe that the bonds and the connections that we have with other people provide us with a greater sense of meaning and happiness and well-being than any other human experience, which is to say that it is the quality of your relationships which ultimately will determine the quality of your lives. Even the Harvard longitudinal studies, that's 8 decades long, that has followed men, at the end of all what these men had accomplished and have accomplished, it was the relationships that they have that was the most important marker for their health, their mental health, their sense of well-being, and their sense of meaning in their lives. Relationship norms are changing rapidly. They're shifting under our feet. And I've done a lot of work talking about them in the personal space. But what is really important is to see what is happening at work and how much of my work on relationships in the last year or two has brought me to work with co-founders, with executive teams, with companies, and at corporate conferences. Why? This idea that the language of emotion is entering the workplace and has literally become the new business buzzwords is very telling about something that is happening at this moment. And there's a lot of restlessness in the world about relationships, about how we handle disagreements, breaches, violations of trusts, and it makes us very anxious. And when we get anxious, we tend to react, because the first thing we want to do is do away with the anxiety rather than sit, think, process, listen, and then figure out what we want to do. So part of what we will do here as well is to slow down a little bit. There's been 2 relationship revolutions. One is happening at home, and one is now happening at work. The relationship revolutions have 2 things in common, and it's this. It wasn't too long ago that our sense of identity was something that was basically given to us. And it still is like that in many other parts of the world. You knew who you were, you knew you had a clear sense of belonging, you had a good sense of rootedness, and you had a sense of continuity. Your rules were clear, so you knew what was expected. Parents knew how to talk to their kids, husbands knew how to talk to their wives, wives knew what not to say to their husbands. It was rules, it was duty, it was obligation, it was clarity, it was certainty, and all the big decisions were made for us, which meant that you were rarely alone, but you also were barely free. And we live now in our world here, in which we have more freedom or supposed freedom than we have ever thought we had. The clarity and the rules and the duty and the obligations have been replaced by choice and by options, and certainty has been replaced by uncertainty and by massive self-doubt. It takes a lot to have to define who we are. That process of self-definition that is part of our identity formation at this moment has created a situation where the burdens of the self have never been heavier. And many of you are spending your time wondering, who am I? What am I? Am I what I want to be? Am I where I want to be? Is this good enough? Can I be more? Can I be better? There's a reason the self-help movement is as powerful as it is. Because it feeds an entire frenzy of individual people who are longing for individual pursuits, but ultimately also to connect with other people. This shift has also been met by something else. For a long time, our relationships at home were basically for survival. Then we brought in romantic love and companionship. And now we have gone up the Maslow ladder of needs and we want intimate relationships for self-actualization. Meaning, I want you to help me become the best version of myself. Something very similar is also happening at work. We don't just leave because the factory closes when we have those options. We leave because we are not being properly promoted, because we are not being recognized, because we are not being seen, because our identity formation is being stunted. We expect our managers to be our coaches and to help us move up the Maslow ladder of needs. If we used to leave our relationships because we were unhappy, and now we leave them because we could be happier, the same thing is happening at work. We don't just leave because we are unhappy or because we are not getting the paycheck that we want, but we leave for the quality of our life and our relationships and our self-development that we expect to meet in those work situations. And for many of us, we will have a 10-year period where we will be often single or in nomadic relationships and primarily look to work to give us what once religion used to provide.